And there is something about that as well, isn't there? So probably the last thing I want to ask you really, which is about the role of individuals in all of this, because that period in itself had 4 or 5 very high profile individuals, all of whom are in different places. Maybe 4 or 5 is an understatement. Maybe it was 10 or 12, but in the same way you just mentioned it locally for you with the fallen angels, and we know the 3 or 4, perhaps 5, 6 protagonists here in Bangor. There is a need for, I suppose, was it William White calls them something about the carriers or the super carriers of recovery as well, isn't it? There's something else as well as the community, isn't there, about those individuals? Yes.
Yeah, and I mean it's always a double-edged sword, isn't it, with individuals, because they, you know, they can become these vectors is another word I've heard, you know, because they carry that infection of recovery. But then, you know, often the movements then can become associated with them as individuals.
Of course.
And then it depends on that individual, but that can become something quite negative or toxic, depending on what that person's agenda is or what their particular kind of profile or strengths and weaknesses are. So it's important, you know, that question about sustainability, you know, is what is the role for individuals? You know, can you have these kind of guru figures in the recovery movement where you kind of need them, but they are also potentially a massive liability?
And I've always thought it's very high risk to those individuals, because we know one of the traits that's associated with some of the behavior that's arrived them at being promoted at those gurus is actually a feeding of some egotism and narcissism as well, of course, and being put on the pedestal in the community can only at some level feed into that stuff as well. Yes.
Yeah, I mean these gurus really need to have done their own work, don't they?
Yes. But I think, to be solid, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. I think I feel like I can, you know, I hope I can see, you know, I know who I look up to in the recovery world. I hope I'm getting better at making good judgments about that. But you never know, do you? And everybody is flawed, and everybody's only a human being, and you know, whatever the kind of the motivations, people can make mistakes, and you know, we've got to be a community that's kind of big enough to cope with that, I think.
So I think one of the analogies that's coming across to me across this whole interview, in the way you've described some things, whether it's the multiplicity of understanding higher power or the multiplicity of recovery choices, or not being reliant on individuals, it's pretty clear as if you know, for recovery, that we, you know, as individuals and as a community, we definitely don't have all our eggs in one basket, it seems to me.
Yes. Yeah, that's a perfect metaphor for the whole conversation.
There's a singular line of thinking in places that, if it stays singular, it's probably not very healthy. Yes.
Yeah, I think so.